Welcome to our Corporate Governance and Sustainability Talk podcast. We are coming to you from the Rami Makhzoumi Corporate Governance Initiative at the Suliman Olayan Business School at the American University of Beirut, where we unpack the environmental, social, and governance narrative and discuss how business and society can come together, advancing responsible leadership across the Middle East and North African region for governance excellence and corporate sustainability. On today's chat, we are going to have an interesting conversation taking place around the world and particularly in the MENA region. With COP28 around the corner, awareness and mobilization to climate transition has never been so high. We will weigh in on the value drivers that small to medium-sized companies, including startups, need to embark on and the journey ahead in tackling the environmental and social challenges. The UN Global Compact is tackling SMEs and looking ahead to the WorldBank and other ecosystem players that are trying to make this a critical focus as we move business and society forward. How will SMEs automate their reporting? How will environmental and social challenges be met? And how will they factor into the reporting? Engaging in workshops and collaborative conversations with all these organizations are just some examples to help us move forward and add value to businesses. We know that RDCL has been investing time and unwavering efforts to bring together small to medium-sized organizations in the country and determine what their business value drivers are to support them in pivoting and scaling up, model and leveraging through their network to support the private sector as a whole in turn. Having a core group is where a company needs to begin. SMEs need to write their charter, establish their governance, prioritize, and know who their stakeholders are and stay true to that. I have with me today Professor Alain Daou. Hi, Alain.
Hi, Nada.
Alain is a professor at the business school at AUB, at OSB. He convenes the marketing, management, and entrepreneurship track. His emphasis and expertise is mostly in social entrepreneurship. And also, I know that you are chairing the Nature Conservation Center at AUB. Alain, after the Beirut blast, we know you were heavily involved in supporting and helping SMEs get back on their feet. We are now in year 3 after that devastating event, not to mention the economy fallout the country has been through. We want our audience to get to know you better. Can you please tell us what your moment was for chairing the Nature Conservation Center and embarking on the social entrepreneurship and environmental journey?
Thank you, Nada. Just to say that I didn't start with social entrepreneurship and the business mindset. Way before that, I was working with NGOs for about 10 years. I was in Latin America, in Africa, in the Middle East, working with different NGOs. And at some point, I got this aha moment of saying, okay, what I'm doing is having good impact, helping people, but it's not sustainable. There must be a better model. There must be a better way of doing things so that people, get empowered and have a sustainable...
So this was before you became a professor?
Yes, before that. And then working 10 years with the NGOs led me to think we can do better. And this is where I went for my PhD and my postdoc between Canada and Belgium on social entrepreneurship, because I believe that this model, on one hand, has the benefits of the NGOs of having a social and environmental impact. Mm-hmm. And on the other hand, it has the sustainability and the economic sustainability, which we need if we want things to change over the long term and not being dependent on aid all the time.
Right.
So when I did that, I moved to Lebanon 6 years ago and joined the Olayan School of Business, AUB, and started volunteering and working with the Nature Conservation Center, working on this because I believe that you cannot tackle change, be it from a business perspective or anything else, if it's not from a holistic,
Right.
model or perspective.
Right.
And this is what NCC offered me, this multidisciplinary.
Right.
Yeah, exactly. And so I started working on these topics in the MENA region, on social entrepreneurship, circular economy, green entrepreneurship, and so on. Until the Beirut blast happened. And this is where, with like-minded colleagues who are scholar activists across disciplines, we came together and started Khadid Beirut to say that we need to do something about this. And I was lucky to chair the SME Impact Initiative, in which we were able to support about 30 SMEs to rebuild them in Mar Mikhail and Jemmezi areas.
Well, obviously, NCC was ahead of its time, right? It seems that you started chairing it right around the pandemic time or a little bit before that, was it?
2 years ago, yeah.
2 years ago, so right maybe in the middle of the pandemic. the pandemic was a big highlighter for everyone, in terms of environment and social, in terms of driving that. And I think it was a lesson learned for everyone kind of to put it on the top of their, I don't like to use the word agenda, but to make it a priority for companies also to be a bit more conscientious. And Alain, I also think that, and let me know, what your thoughts are in terms of the millennials, Generation Z, and now we have the Alpha generation. This is happening on a global and a regional level, given our current challenges in the country and the economy and what have you. How do you see SMEs still surviving amidst all of this and factoring in the environmental and social? I know it's easier for innovative and startups, but in terms of SMEs that are still struggling with their day-to-day operation, how do you see the way forward for them is in breaking through these challenges?
This is not an easy one, especially in the Lebanese context and even in the MENA context. But there's a lot that can be done, and there's a lot that is being done at the same point. But let's not forget one thing, that globally and even in Lebanon, SMEs make up over 95% of all enterprises. So they are extremely important, and they have a great impact over, socially, employment, even social cohesion and the environment, as well as on the economy. So we have this tendency always to focusing on the economic impact of SMEs, even the traditional ones, but they also have a lot of impact. In today's economy, in today's world, also we have another variable that you mentioned. This is the new generation, Gen Z. And these have other ways of looking at the world. They have a worldview that is different from ours and the previous ones. We did 2 studies lately at the NCC, at the Nature Conservation Center. In one, we looked at how Gen Z copes or looks at ecotourism. And in the other one, we looked at Gen Z's perception of single-use plastic. And in both cases, we see that they differ from the traditional or more millenniums and previous generations on one hand. They are more conscious, and they want change, social and environmental, and these values are important to them. So if SMEs in today's world want to be able to to attract this generation who has the money, who has the purchasing power, and who will be making the most of the upcoming economy, we need to tackle these issues.
Right.
And it's not easy for SMEs to shift and to adapt.
Right.
There are multiple ways of doing so.
Right.
And this is a long-term investment for them. They have to look at it as we need to adapt to the upcoming generations. We need to adapt to this new world where we have environmental issues that are extremely impacting the day-to-day activities of any SME.
Right.
So we need the SMEs to change their mindset and adapt. But as you said, startups, for them it's easier because
it's in their DNA.
Exactly.
Right, they're starting off on the right track, and usually it is the Generation Z and millennials that are starting up the startups, I think. So they're already paving the way for that. We know, Alain, that profit and purpose can move forward together, and that aligning a company's values and strategy to its purpose is key. And this is the narrative the ecosystem and every consultant is trying to advocate for with regards to SMEs. There's no long-term gain without some kind of cost or loss in the short term. What is the cost? Referring to the next generation of consumers, mostly stemming from millennials, Generation Z, and Alpha that are coming up. Looking for brands and businesses who are authentic, like you said, brands with a soul. They're willing to pay that extra premium for that. This is how this next generation is going to be functioning. For those who wish and are able to pivot and scale up while aligning their values and strategy to their purpose, what, in your opinion, are examples of costs and challenges faced in order to break through in this journey and get to the other side?
2 ways to look at it. One, costs or challenges, but at the same time, opportunities. And there's lots of opportunities, and it depends on how we frame it and look at it. As you said, the context is very heavy on the Lebanese economy, but beyond that, there are lots of opportunities. So the costs are really, if you want to look at it at the long term, the costs will be heavy on SMEs who don't adapt. So it's better to think short-term costs in which you have to transition toward a more sustainable business model to be able to adapt for the long term. And this implies many things. I'll give a couple of examples, and that's why I love social entrepreneurship, because they have thought of these initially but when they are building that social enterprise, because they want to make sure that they are economically, socially, and environmentally viable.
Right.
For instance, if you take any organization today that is buying from suppliers, and they have the resources are increasing, the cost of these resources is increasing, electricity bill is increasing, water shortages are becoming more salient, and we are facing this, and over time it's going to get worse. So all of these factors are pushing SMEs to a higher cost, to more challenges in terms of production.
Right.
But if we take these elements into account from day one, and we start transitioning into a more sustainable model whereby we reduce these elements of
Right.
consumption, of having a business model that is more economically friendly, even if we think about circular economy, for instance. And this is something I worked on in 2018 with the wine industry in Lebanon. We worked with them and we told them, you are used to working with this business model, you're making profits, you're doing well, but we know that you'll be facing environmental challenges, especially in agriculture.
Right.
The cost is rising, and you cannot be as competitive. So let's look at your business model and from a circular economy perspective. And let's do a circular economy business model for the wine industry in Lebanon. And we worked with 6 of them, small ones, medium ones, and big ones, to map the whole business model and to see how we can softly and over the long term introduce changes that are economically viable, but at the same time having the impact needed, and in the long term having the sustainable model they want to achieve.
Right. And would you say also that for SMEs today, those who are compliant or trying to make this shift in their model, this will also enhance their access to finance?
Definitely,
in terms
yes.
of funding?
Yes, definitely. They have multiple advantages of doing so.
Do they know that today here in Lebanon?
No. So if you look at impact investing and green investing, or all of these new models of investment, these are still new or in infancy in Lebanon.
Right.
In the world, they've been around for the past decade maybe, and increasing. So because of the Lebanese crisis, maybe they were delayed to come to Lebanon. But if you look at, more importantly today, not the impact investors, but we look at donors who are supporting the SMEs and supporting the private sector in Lebanon, this is becoming a demand from their side. They want them to achieve, yes, to be sustainable, to have good jobs, but also to align with international standards such as the EU Green Transition or Green Deal, to make sure that the businesses in Lebanon, if they want to get access to funding from the EU, they have to have these values and this green model or transition towards a more sustainable business model.
We know that the American University of Beirut, Mediterraneo, is set to open its doors to students this coming fall in Paphos, and we are all very much excited and looking forward to that. I know you have been engaged in setting some of the foundational steps for the opening of the business school. With your background in convening the Management Marketing Entrepreneurship track at AUB and chairing the AUB NCC, and your awareness on the rising importance of sustainable education to students, what can you tell us about incorporating? How do you think you are going to incorporate this culture there? And do you think you're going to have, challenges? And do you see it also being incorporated into the curriculum? How are you going to take these values that you have? I know it's part of who you are as well. How are you going to basically instill that in the culture at the new campus in Paphos?
So I have to say, before even talking about OSB Mediterraneo, that at AUB, at OSB in Beirut, we have lots of this. If you look at the School of Business, we are pioneering in terms of sustainability. If you look at the staff and faculty that we have today, that type of research we do. So I personally look a lot at environmental and social, but I have lots of my colleagues who work on gender issues. We have colleagues who work on entrepreneurship from different angles, and even in our teaching, we do incorporate social entrepreneurship and so on.
And I know we do, and I know you've been leading on that front, and there's a lot of other faculty that are active also on that front. You're starting a new business school. It's also kind of considered in Europe, you know, where also these subjects are they're more progressive and mature.
That's the main difference.
I think this is it. And even though here we're ahead in some things, also sometimes the market isn't mature enough.
Exactly.
You know?
So let me comment on this one. So that, as I said, we are very much pioneering here, but in Cyprus and in Europe, we will have to be even further, because once again, we go back to this idea of governance. The EU is investing $1.8 trillion in the Green Deal, and this is trickling down to the education system. All universities, all higher education, even schools, will have to train their faculty members, staff, students. It has to be across all the topics. So they want sustainability education and, you know, to be a topic that is across everything. And this is where they are leading, and I think Europe is the leader in this in terms of education and sustainability. So of course, OSB Mediterraneo and the whole of AUB Mediterraneo will have to align with this, and it's gonna become an opportunity for us, I believe, to push things even further in terms of research and education, in the way we teach, in the way we incorporate these topics. So this is something also, this is the positive thing, is that we are being encouraged to do it there, while in Beirut it is something that we are pushing.
It's like the startup that we said, it's in their DNA. So it's going to be in the DNA of the new campus probably, compared to here where we're also sometimes still pushing forward. I want to go back just to when I was talking about RDCL and Beritech. You know, we worked on a project together, and it was basically mapping the ecosystem, right, post the pandemic and post the economical fallout and crisis that Lebanon has been facing. And we did that with the support of Beritech and LLWB, and kind of trying to see and filter through who remained in the country, who's active, who has pivoted, who can model pivoting to others a year and a half later almost. How do you see the impact of that project? Do you feel that there has been progress in moving forward from that point? I would like to emphasize also that ESG was a big part of the concept note that we tried to put together. Remember that we knew that anybody who was looking for support had to have in their core, or had to have in their strategy, and be aligned, you know, on the value of being environmentally and socially conscious.
So once again, this is where when we did this exercise, and it was quite exhaustive, and we were able to see that lots of people left, the ecosystem, entrepreneurship and startup ecosystem downsized and shifted to supporting more SMEs instead of startups because of the need and the opportunities. But at the same time, also we saw that there was an opportunity to do things better, to have a more responsible business in Lebanon, and with purpose, and to instill this, because by telling people, you know what, you need support, you want money to be able to pass this phase, which is, you know, full of hurdles and challenges. But in this case, you have also to change your business model and to think a little bit more in the social aspect, and the type of employment you have, and the quality of the employment, and the employment processes that you have and practices, but also on the environmental front. What impact are you having? Are you mapping this impact? Are you measuring it? What kind of, how can you reduce the negative impact? How you maximize the positive environmental impact that you have? What are the tools that you need? What is the kind of support needed in this case to be able to transition? Because, you know, for a company who's been working for 10, 15, 20 years with a small team, It's not easy to tell them, okay, now it's time to change your business model.
Right.
They need that
and we
support.
can't dismiss the brain drain and all the
Definitely.
other challenges that the SMEs have been encountering.
Exactly. So there's a time, it needs time. There are expenses and financing that needs to come with it. You have lots of training and of the staff and the people who are working in the SMEs to make sure that they are aware of the importance of these transitions, and at the same time that they are equipped and have the tools for it. So it is really a long-term investing in the ecosystem to make sure that we do things better.
Right, right. And it can be done, but it will take some time, but we'll get there. Well, thank you, Alain. Thank you for being with us today. Thank you for your time. Thank you, and till next time.